We will be opposing this continuing resolution because while they put the CHIP program in there, they do not put the accompanying provisions that make CHIP work.
The most responsible thing we can do is avoid that chaos and pass this continuing resolution that we're bringing to the floor.
The CR prepared by the Speaker is not an honest attempt to govern.
We can pass a non-controversial bipartisan bill to keep the government open, or Democrats in Congress can manufacture a crisis and force a government shutdown over the entirely unrelated issue of illegal immigration.
Well, at this hour, Congress is not sure whether they're going to have the votes. Maybe in the House side they do, but in the Senate side it looks more doubtful at this hour. Senator McConnell putting out a letter to Senate Republicans earlier. We should all plan to stay through this weekend if Senate Democrats follow through and are willing to shut down the government and the Children's Health Insurance Program, that's CHIP, that Representative Pelosi was mentioning earlier, because they have yet to conclude a deal on DACA. This is an irresponsible position to take, as everything from pay for our military to processing Social Security checks will be affected. I hope not a single Republican is inclined to join them. I know we're all frustrated by the pace of negotiations on spending, but joining Democrats to shut down the government plays right into the Democrats' hand. Well, Senator Lindsey Graham put out a statement saying he's one of them, and there may be others. Let's bring in our panel. Jonah Goldberg, senior editor at National Review, Amy Walter, national editor for the Cook Political Report, and Steve Hilton is a former advisor to British Prime Minister David Cameron and host of The Next Revolution here on Fox News Channel. Amy, just in the past minute or so, the Freedom Caucus saying they're warming up to the idea of supporting the continuing resolution, in part because they're going to have another vote to bolster military readiness. But it is nip and tuck up there. It is.
We knew this going in. And look, this has been pretty much of a constant, even in the Boehner era, nonetheless, the Paul Ryan era, of a conference that still does not have the ability to be organized in one, nice, tight movement. We thought that maybe the president was going to be able to bring the party together, right? We spent most of 2016 talking about the party kind of breaking apart. Now here's a chance for a unifying moment. But the problems that were there before Donald Trump was president remain even as president. Issues about spending, issues about immigration still divide the party. They're going to continue to divide the party, whether it's in the House. And the other issue, of course, going forward, which we're going to talk about, is it may pass the House, but I think you're exactly right. The Senate is a whole different ball of wax. Not only do they need Democrats to support this, but right now I think they've lost, Mitch McConnell has lost at least 2 Republicans, maybe 3. So that means getting 11 to 12 Democrats.
Yeah, I think Lindsey Graham, Rand Paul,
right,
and there may be others.
And also McCain and Cochran aren't necessarily going to be there for the vote, right? So you're starting with basically 49, which is a problem.
Yeah. So what does this mean about the ability of Republicans to control the White House, the Senate, and the House, and the ability to have government function, period?
Yeah, well, I don't think it speaks very well, and obviously these are divisions, as Amy was saying, that go back a good ways. I think in some ways you could sort of see one of these divisions in the sort of implosion of an immigration deal this week, because Lindsey Graham may speak for a handful of Republicans, but he actually doesn't speak for the ideological conservatives of the Republican Party. It was a bipartisan deal in the sense that Lindsey Graham essentially agreed with all of the Democrats on this. It would have been a much more productive thing to work out a compromise with someone like Tom Cotton, who actually speaks for the sort of the broader base of conservatives and Republicans. But that's the problem, is that there are some large fault lines that run right through the Republican Party and the conservative movement, and it doesn't seem like Donald Trump has a hands-on understanding of where they are or how to put them all together. Everyone seems to want to give Donald Trump wins, but that may not be enough.
Well, he has his thumbs on his Twitter account. Just in the past minute, House of Representatives needs to pass government funding bill tonight. So important for our country. Our military needs it. Steve.
Look, I think we're long past overdue for a proper reckoning on all this. I actually find myself somewhat agreeing with Lindsey Graham that we don't need another short-term deal, but I would go much further. We don't need a long-term deal either. What we need is a real deep rethink of the federal government, the whole role of it, and the structure of what goes on in Washington, D.C., because the reason that we're in this endless crisis is that everyone on the Hill, they're fighting for their piece of the pie. That is driven by the interest that got them there. The unions on the left and the big businesses and big donors on the right. It is the swamp in action. Everyone's fighting for something. The bigger the pie is, the bigger that the fight is. And the real answer here is actually to rethink the role of the federal government, to start thinking about what functions could be done better at the state level or even more local than that. Now, I don't see any sign of that happening, but that's the real long-term answer.
Right. But I guess, Amy, politically, in a midterm election year, you've got this tax reform law now that is kicking in a lot of states. A lot of companies are funneling money in. Apple with that big announcement. The stock market's cooking. And if the government shuts down, it kind of squelches a little of the politics
of the momentum
that's already Republican not friendly.
That's right. I mean, it really depends on how long, if there is a shutdown, how long it would be. Would it really have an impact on the economy? But I think to your broader point, it's exactly right, which is the fact that, you know, Republicans are finally starting to get some momentum. The economy, as you said, cooking along. The president today made a good speech in Pennsylvania, making the case for why the economy is doing better and why Republicans should be rewarded for that. But a lot of the impetus for passing the tax bill beyond its policy component was for Republicans to prove, after failing at repealing Obamacare, that indeed they could walk and chew gum. They could pass legislation. They could do things just with Republican votes, and that they were not dysfunctional. Now, here we have something that's supposed to be easy, keeping the government running. If you can't do the easy stuff, how are we going to get to all this talk about infrastructure and something else big happening between now and the end of the year? Seems impossible.
I mean, we know that there are a lot of Republicans out there who say, shut it down because, you know, the government needs to be reformed and all that stuff, but it's not a good thing overall. This was interesting today. The New York Times, using its editorial page and putting letters from Trump voters who are talking about year one. I hadn't seen that before, and it kind of shows a little bit maybe of the disconnect of the conventional wisdom that it's going to be this huge Democratic wave, but there are still folks who say, hey, listen, I'm on board to what he's doing.
No, I was very much in favor of what the New York Times did. To me, it was sort of a service to their readers, because a lot of the regular readers in the New York Times never hear the pro-Trump point of view, and it sort of punctured a hole in the Pauline Kaelism of the whole thing. That said, I think it's really very much not in Donald Trump's interest for the government to shut down. I think you can have a very legitimate argument about who deserves blame. It's very difficult to figure out, to predict it, because we never had a shutdown where one party controlled all three branches of government. I'm totally open to the idea that on the merits, Democrats are to be blamed. But I think that generally speaking, outside of those people who basically make up 34% in the polls, when you have chaos in Washington, when things don't seem to be running right, the media narrative, the Democratic messaging, that runs against Donald Trump's interests. Chaos is going to get blamed on Donald Trump, fairly or not. And I think Amy's exactly right. Republicans are getting a little momentum. I think things still look bad for 2018. But why you would want to derail the news about things like this Apple move and the rest is beyond me.